verse 1 tells us something about his background. And I want you to notice this for a very specific reason, because the scripture says in chapter 16, Paul also came to Derbe and to Lystra, and a disciple was there named Timothy, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but his father was a Greek. That is, he was an unbeliever. And he was well spoken of, that is, Timothy was, well spoken of by the brethren who were in Lystra and Iconium. Now, why would I want to bring that up is simply this, that Timothy was raised in a family where the father was not a Christian. But this grandmother had this awesome faith, and the mother had this faith. That grandmother handed down, I'm going to explain this in a moment, handed down or passed her faith on to the mother, and the mother also on to Timothy. Somebody said, wait a minute. So, no one else can believe for you. That's absolutely correct. And no one else can have your faith. That's true. But you can pass on by influence. You can pass on that sense of faith, that sense of obedience to God, that pattern of living. Yes, you can. That's what influence is all about. That's what impact is all about. It's about passing on. It's about influencing. It's about making a difference in somebody else's life by the testimony and influence of our life. And so what he's saying is simply this. I see in you, Timothy, that same faith that I saw in your mother and that I saw in your grandmother. And he says, I'm persuaded that it's in you. And one of the reasons that he chose him to go with him was this, that he already, as a young man, was having the kind of influence and testimony. The scripture says in Acts that he was very well spoken of by people in other places. And so when Paul came along and he's getting ready to go on his second missionary journey, then here he is on that missionary journey, and he sees in this young man the possibilities of a servant of God. What made him see that? He saw in him what? A degree of faith, and he knew where it came from because he knew his mother and his grandmother. So let me ask you a question. Though you cannot hand somebody your faith, you can influence that. You can pass it on to them by your life. So I ask you this question. Is your faith worth passing on? Is your faith weak, easily challenged? You give in, you give up, you doubt, you fear. Or is your faith the kind of faith that perseveres, that keeps on believing when everything around you looks like there is no God? When you don't feel it, when you don't see it, when you can't touch it, you're still able to believe, to trust him, and to believe that his principles are eternal principles and they don't change. So the question is this, is your faith worth passing on? Is your faith worth passing on to someone else? Will it impact them, influence them, build them up, strengthen them, prepare them to face life as it is? Or is your kind of faith not even worth passing on? Well, I trust that it is, and so what I want to do in this message is this. I simply want to give you some suggestions that will help you pass on your faith to your children and to your grandchildren. So that requires something of us. And let's take a few moments to look at something very clear and very honestly. I want you to think about this as a parent. Your child comes into this world, in this nation or any nation, and they come in knowing nothing, and there they are, totally pliable like clay in your hands. So you're going to influence them in one of